Voices from the Mausoleum is brought to you by the You Run Podcast Network and yourunpodcast.com. Hey everyone, welcome back to Voices from the Mausoleum. Steve here. We've got two awesome guests that I'm excited to talk with. One returning and one new face.
Hello.
Hello. So for those of you who remember, Tyler was on a couple of months ago to talk about his feature film, The Shade, which everyone was super excited about. And during the Q&A, I found out that they have this little multiverse of sorts going on with the Shade universe. So joining Tyler, we have Adam Miller, creative director of the Shade Anthology graphic novel. I don't want to get like the ring light reflection, so I'm trying to do like a fancy little angle here, but the
just let it shine,
art
baby.
is stunning. Like truly, like eye-popping. I don't know if you showed the art during the film festival at Brooklyn, but I know you guys talked about it at least.
We definitely did, and Adam can talk about this. I mean, we had an amazing booth. Oddly enough, a little bit coincidental, but very nice that it coincided, was that we had New York Comic-Con going on at the exact same time as the Brooklyn Horror Film Festival. So while I was over there, doing the best I could to, sort of deal with all the goings on and enjoy the film festival, Adam and some of our other people at Red King were over at Comic-Con holding it down and talking about the book and everything, and it was cool.
We were trying to find like the best spot to like debut the book, and like our aspirational goal was to launch it at New York, but so a lot of moving pieces when you're making a film and making a pretty large anthology and running a company and chasing a dream and trying to feed your face and all those things. So really we were kind of back and forth on what we were going to do, and then ultimately everything kind of clicked into place, and through, that's a very oversimplification of how it happened. There were a lot of rings that had to get jumped through and rabbits pulled out of hats to make it happen, but we were able to debut the anthology basically right with the movie. So it was, from afar, we looked very organized and intentional. But it was, it was a hype week though. Like it was about as exciting as you could get for us. Like New York Comic-Con is the largest pop culture event in the country, and we got to premiere the book right leading into the premiere of the film at like a major horror fest. So it was awesome.
Oh yeah. What before we kind of dive into the origins of the graphic novel, just because I love New York Comic-Con. It's been a minute. I think pre-pandemic was the last time I was there, but I had gone there like 7-8 years. I had gone in a row. I love it. It's such a blast. Where were you guys? Were you down in like Artist Alley? Where were you sort of situated?
We were up in the main exhibition area.
Oh, sick.
So yeah, it was cool. We had a pretty big badass booth too. It was fun. We had a cosplay element. We had merch. We had big backdrops and photo ops and variant covers and a team of people, and we did signings, and Tyler and I it was fun. We got to do a signing together, and that was a lot of fun. So
yeah, it
was we tried to give the full Comic-Con experience for the people that came out and found us.
Oh yeah. Well, I hope you guys sort of got to enjoy some of the other stuff too while you're sort of pushing the Shade. Did you get to kind of like explore a little bit?
I mean, it was kind of a blur, but we definitely, I tried to take the moments, you know what I mean? Like, I don't know. Tyler makes fun of me a little bit, but I'm always telling him like, dude, like, they can't take this away from you. Like this is like remember this, like, enjoy these moments. And he's always like, all right, dude.
Yeah. I'm just trying not to have a panic attack. No, I'll tell you what, and I'm almost loath to admit this, but I had never been to a Comic-Con before, and I had kept hearing about, oh dude, this is going to be so cool, like we're super fortunate, and it's going to be a ton of fun to be where we are at the Javits Center at New York Comic-Con. And I really was, everyone was very excited about it. Obviously Adam was super excited about it and wouldn't stop talking about it, which is a good thing. And I remember the first time I walked into the Javits, and I got there and I was like, I have no idea how to even approach this place. let alone
Crazy.
go inside and like find, you know, the Red King booth that we had. Because like I said, I was busy over at the film festival while they were doing all the setup at the Comic-Con and everything. So I will never forget. I think it was an incredible experience for me to, you know, when Dave and Nicole and some of the other people from Red King that were working the booth, because Adam obviously was there holding it down, kind of like led me through that, like the enormity, the expanse of the Javits Center and the incredible event, the massive event that is New York Comic Con. Just walking through for the first time and seeing what we were able to be a part of was fantastic. It was incredible. And I was like, how did I go this long? You know, maybe I've spent too much of my life like sitting in the dark of my room watching movies. You know what I mean? It was incredible. It was fantastic. I mean,
The way I describe it to people who haven't been is basically like a sea of humanity, you know,
yeah,
and it's also the kind of thing that so there's a lot of little hidden time sucks, right? So like you if you leave your booth, it's a commitment. Like you're
Hmm.
gone for a while, and not because you're not moving with intention, but because you can't move, you know.
yeah,
And so it was really like if one of us left, it was depending on obviously there's like anything there's ebbs and flows of an event that size, but when it was going, you weren't
yeah.
you were staying put, and then when you would leave the booth to catch your breath for a minute, it was always like, see you when I see you kind of thing.
No,
Because
exactly.
it's San Diego's the same way. The first time I went to San Diego was years ago now, and it was kind of a like a fanboy dream at that stage of the game, right? And so the first time I went, I remember I just wanted to try to really take in the enormity of it, and so I walked until I found a wall. I walked until I found like the end of this thing, like the concrete, and I put my back against the wall, like stiff as a board, and I just looked and I couldn't see her horizon line. It was just an infinite sea of Comic Con, and I was like, "Yeah, this is cool." So this is the kind of nerdy shit that I do
Yeah,
because I want those memories, because so
Hmm.
much of what Tyler does and what I do, and what you're doing here, Steve, with your vehicle, is you've got to find other reasons, and you've got to find reasons for yourself, right? That get you going and make
Absolutely.
things sticky and keep things moving. And for me, like for example, at New York Comic Con, I was determined to get my morning run in, like in Manhattan. Like our hotel was right in Manhattan, and I got up real early one morning, and I went for my run through Times Square. Like that's mine. You know what I mean? Like I got that. Like that's so forever, right? I did a morning run that with the sun coming up, surrounded by the lights and the signs and the garbage men and the guys hosing down their sidewalk and the cabs and like that's for me. Like when I went to San Diego, finding the back of that wall and seeing that no horizon line, like that's for me. So I try to do that kind of stuff, and then enjoy what you can. I'm not the best at smelling the roses. I kind of like the finish line's always moving, and you're always sort of chasing the next thing, which I think is a byproduct of what we're all doing, right? But to have experiences with the people that are close to you that work on the projects with you. Like I remember the signing with Tyler. I remember our production lead, John Cardinal, was with me for the event, and we made sure that at the end of the night we went and got a New York slice. Like so we got New York slice
Yeah.
every night, and it's like finding those little things. It's the stuff around the stuff. Like of course the thing right is Tyler made a freaking movie. Like, how many people make a movie? Not many, right? Like, not a lot of humans made a movie. He did. Like, we went to the premiere. We had the red carpet. We felt so included. All the artists were there. All the artwork from the comic book was on display. I was able to take my whole team to this event, and like it's a way for everybody to feel value and everybody to celebrate, right? Everybody to like be there together as like a creative unit in celebration of what Tyler did, right? And like Tyler has all these moments for what he's doing, and then like it's great. Like I get my moments with my guys, and then my guys get their moments with their significant others, and then they get their moments for their kids or their friends or whatever. So like I'm a sap with that stuff, but to me, it's the glue that kind of keeps it all together when
definitely.
you're just grinding, you know.
Oh,
Yes.
absolutely. Yeah, you have to find your way to savor the moment. Really, appreciate like what you've done, right? And like the fact that, and you get to share that with others. Um, so let's take it back to the beginning a little bit. Was the graphic novel sort of conceived of alongside the movie? Was it sort of along the process? Where did the idea, spark?
Yeah, I'll tell you this. Obviously, when Dave Purdy and I started Red King, however many years ago, we named the company Red King Cinema. It was first and foremost in our minds, at least, a company that would concentrate on making feature films. You know what I mean? And at the outset, that's what it was. But very quickly, I would say. We knew that we wanted to sort of expand uh, our offerings or what we were doing or our artistic output beyond that. And I think that we wanted to do it in a way not only that would be a little bit outside the box for people who are movie makers. Like there are different ways to sort of like, okay, we have this thing, let's say we have this idea and it's the shade. You can make t-shirts and lunch boxes and do sequels and all these things, but we're said, we could probably do something more interesting than that. And one of the things that me and Dave always valued was um the idea that as independent artists and independent creators, we wanted to have as much agency and as much sort of creative freedom as we could. And especially in the film industry, we felt as though that was something that wasn't necessarily easy to come by. And we endeavored through development and pre-production to afford ourselves the opportunity to make this movie sort of as freely as we could, in terms of creative constraints and what have you. And I think we just came to a sort of a point where we're like, there are so many incredible artists and creatives, independent artists, creators of all kinds of different things and all kinds of different mediums that are probably looking for something similar. So, I guess we thought, how can we maybe empower some other people, some other artists, some other creators to do something similar without necessarily boundaries or those constraints that we were trying to avoid. And for whatever reason, and I if I really thought hard about it, maybe I could recall the exact moment we talked about doing the comic book or doing an anthology, or something of the sort. But I mean, I've always been a massive fan of the medium. um, and yeah, I mean, we knew Adam was someone who we had been talking to and working with far, like, what am I trying to say? Long before we actually had the idea to do the comic book, because Adam was a friend of Dave's, an incredible artist. Adam is, and we sort of had him do some really really compelling pieces of concept art for the shade, the film, long before we had any idea that he would be heading up a Red King publishing wing or working on this graphic novel or whatever. But it all just sort of evolved from just knowing Adam and having him in the office and talking to him and saying, how can we sort of give some other artists, creators that are much like us, an opportunity to sort of as Dave would put it, play jazz on some of our ideas or concepts. And
Right.
that's sort of how it started. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I mean, from my perspective, it was pretty organic in that same way, you know. So
Mhm.
it depends on when you say start at the beginning, right? And Tyler alluded to it. It's like how far is the beginning, right? So yeah, we had a mutual connection
The
that
primordial ooze.
yeah, so we had a mutual connection that reached out to me to basically inquire if I knew anybody that would be interested in doing some concept illustrations for the movie. And so I had, it just so happened I had some availability when they called, and I was like, I would, take a look at it, and they were like, yeah, well, let's see. So basically, I got the script from Tyler early on. I mean, when you think back, it was years ago that I read
It
the script.
was too many years ago.
Yeah, and
You have to give
and
a
I was
number.
really taken by the script. I mean, I was all in. It was one of the first things. I mean, and not in a blowing smoke kind of way. Like it really resonated with me. The two, depending on who you ask, Tyler may disagree, or a different viewer might disagree. For me, the central characters were two brothers, and I have a younger brother, and the role of the middle brother as the older brother to the youngest, it was like it totally spoke to me. So from my perspective, my singular perspective, I was almost viewing the story through the brother relationship, and there were times where, like, I mean, my chest was tight. I was very invested in the script, uh, and so that was a big win, right? Because you guys know, like, when someone you kind of you want to say yes to everything, right? But not everything's a fit, right? And sometimes you read stuff and it doesn't move you, and sometimes the circumstances aren't right, or people aren't serious, or there's a lot of BS out there, right? And this wasn't BS. You could tell right away. Oh, this is the real deal.
Thanks,
Um,
buddy.
and so we did. They wanted, I think, 5 or so concept drawings or whatever. I think it was at the time. This is like, let me get early on, man. This is like we're meeting in Dave's living room with like pieces of
Yes.
18 by 24 white paper with markers,
Incredible.
and like I mean, this is early. You know what I mean? Like they're both super high energy guys. Like I think I am. People would say I am too. And so we're all just trying to get a word in around each other, and
Safe to
it's
say.
conversations flying at a breakneck pace, and I'm getting whacked over the head with all this movie stuff and this script, and I'm like trying to figure out where I fit in and what, all this stuff. So it's I think I did a couple extra illustrations for them just because I was excited about the material. They responded well to them. We went out, had dinner, we had a great night.
Mhm.
So we originally, the idea was I would probably do another batch or two of concept work for them, but I work in a very specific way. And the strength of the specificity of how I work is that it's a little different. The weakness of it is that it's a little restrictive. So I'm not the guy for some situations, and the art director in me knows that and is quick to connect other dots, and that's really the language I speak, right? So as much as I want to advocate for my own work, my real passion is like giving opportunities to artists that I believe in. And I think that's probably why some of the wiring is so consistent and similar with Dave and Tyler. So pretty early on, we were like, yeah, like I'm probably the guy to draw you some cool monsters, but I'm probably not the guy for like supporting characters and settings and site specific things, just because it's unnecessarily labor intensive to work with me for that stuff. So sort of organically, they transitioned to a digital artist, which is the move. That's what you do. It makes perfect sense. They got an amazing concept artist to do their digital work after that. And through these conversations that we were having after that initial batch of concept work, I think I sort of started to see a little bit more what they were about. They started to see a little bit more what I was about. And my actual background, aside from being an illustrator, is pulling these large projects together with big cast of folks. And so in my previous life, I had done this role for a publisher called Terminal Press, who's based in Long Island, and did 6 volumes of an anthology called Zombie Bomb that became the company's largest selling title and led to this position for them for a couple of years. So, yeah, I can draw a scary zombie cool. So can about 5 million other guys. But the thing that, I might
Adam,
be able to
he's
do.
selling yourself a little bit short. I have some gorgeous. I wouldn't even call them illustrations. They're like full on like paintings that he delivered that were like just like jaw droppingly beautiful. I think to put it more succinctly, like this is at one of Adam's strengths, obviously, but he he's not like a storyboard artist, right? I think is what he's saying. But like in terms of the concept art you deliver, man, those paintings are breathtaking. And I wish that I had the folder with them right now because I would hold it.
I appreciate
yeah.
No, I appreciate it. I appreciate it. And it's not even trying to be, it's just I think what I'm supposed to be doing is art directing, right?
Sure,
And
sure.
so the fits, like the puzzles sort of fit together, and just through conversations, it was like, hey, we want to do a comic, and I was like, well, let's do this, and they're like, okay, let's do that, and then we were kind of off and running at that point, and until we weren't, and then we were, and it's there's so our editor Keith McCleary, who was the other, like I had like two sort of guys, right? And my production lead was John Cardinal, and my editor is Keith McCleary, and they were like my right and left for this project. And Keith always says it takes a series of consecutive miracles to make a comic, right? And it takes a series of consecutive miracles to make a movie. And so basically, Dave and Tyler et al. Like corralled a whole series of like successive consecutive miracles, and then they allowed me to attempt to do the same for the anthology. And with their support, we were able to herd the cat and deliver the mini miracles to get anything done, like really done, like at a level that is, like bringing it. It's a lot. Like you got to be surrounded by like-minded folks. You have to have resources. You have to have the ability, the want, right? You have to get real lucky. You have to always grind. You have to all that crap that everyone says, like get on that grind. Like, yeah, I know it's lame. You kind of have to
Yeah.
to like make these things happen.
When we're really coming from like an independent, it's really grassroots, right? It's not like you have this sort of multi-billion-dollar, company being like, okay, here, just have fun, go, go, go. Like you're making it happen. And what I love
I
hearing
would
is,
say, like, in really simple terms, it's I would say it's really hard to make art, but it's harder to find people to make it with, right?
mm,
Like if making art was easy, people wouldn't quit, right? We all know people that quit. So making art is hard, but finding the right folks to make it with, to me, is harder than making it. And
Yeah.
that's, I knew pretty early on that these guys were the right guys to make stuff with.
yeah. Well, what I love sort of, the dots that the two of you are sort of piecing together there, right? So Tyler's talking about, through Red King and creating this space of like creative freedom and expression and being able to really like play to strengths. Sort of there's like a direct through line of you sort of finding like, okay, here are my strengths. I'm able to play in this sandbox in this way. And here are other people's strengths, putting it together to make it happen. So it's sort of like a, I don't know if you guys planned it that way, but it was sort of a beautiful narrative you got there going on.
No, that's spot on. Yeah.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
So I mean, talking about the process of putting, because there are 5, 6 fantastic stories. And I don't want to give too much away because I want everyone to be able to go out there and read these stories and really, get the full impact. But it's 2, 4. Can I count? 6. There are 6
Yeah,
really fantastic stories.
six short stories and 8 pinups in the back in a pretty robust gallery section, and then we have 2 covers to or A cover, B cover, main cover and a variant cover, and then we also did a preview edition, which was like a promotional item to give away to people that were interested to come back for more. So the preview holds one of the stories from the anthology, and then that same story exists within the anthology, and then through the anthology you have the J. Lee cover and then the variant cover. So try to give some variety, with the way people can get their hands on the stuff, whether it's at a show in person, online at the with digital reader, or through the website for physical copies. But like trying to tap a couple different people's tastes.
Oh yeah, and well, it's so cool is that these stories really sort of run the gamut, the variety of styles. Really talk about going to get into people's tastes.
Yeah.
It really is just. I know I used the word multiverse before, but I mean, it's deeper than that. I don't want not to take something from Marvel, but
Deeper than the multiverse. I love that. I love the way you think.
And also, like it's easy to throw stones at the MCU right now for all of its flaws, right? But like, I mean, I'm a Marvel kid. Like I grew up on Marvel comics, so Marvel comics is running proudly through my veins. Did I see any of the last 15 movies? Absolutely no. I've moved way away from the movies. They're not for me anymore. But like Marvel's my heart. So there's no shade at the mighty Marvel Manor.
You down the
No pun
ball.
intended, no shade. Yes.
Yes. Dude, you know, um I love to hear you say that, Steve, to talk about sort of the gamut and the beautiful sort of array of stories and aesthetics we have within this book, because that's one of the things we wanted. That's one of the things
Mhm.
we aim to do. And Adam can talk a little bit more about this, obviously, but you know, one of the things we set out to do when we decided we want to do the book, when we wanted to do the anthology, was that we don't want to sort of confine anyone too strictly. Like, we don't want to be like, here's your box, like tell the story there.
Right.
You know what I mean? Obviously, when Dave and I conceived the movie, and the thematic content of the movie,
Mhm.
we had some very specific ideas about it and about what we were trying to explore. I don't want to say what we were trying to say, because I hope that we, you know, when we make narrative art, we're trying to ask questions and explore things more than we're trying to, you know, teach lessons or be didactic or any of those things. So
Sure. Yeah.
what do we want to explore, right? That's the question. And you know, we had this idea about this particular thing, let's call it the shade. And we say, okay, what is this emblematic of? What are we trying to explore here with this idea? So we said, if we just gave all these writers and these artists a prompt and said, like, hey, you know, this is our idea of what this thing means. If this is the shade to us and it's emblematic of this, what is it to you? You know what I mean? So we wanted to very lightly sort of push people in the right direction, but definitely not box them in or be too prescriptive about, you know, the sort of stories or the sort of art that they should come up with this for this book. So and I'm super excited and super proud of all you know, the variety, I guess, in what we kind of turned out.
Yeah. I mean,
Yeah, I mean, I think the essence of a good anthology, really, for me, is a couple things. One, does it examine the theme, right, thoroughly and through different perspectives? And generally speaking, not always, generally speaking, anthologies are themed. Um, so I like, you know, if I don't have a different voice and different perspectives and different considerations of the same topic, then I almost feel like what's the point of that? What's the point of the anthology format, right? Just narrow in, get your singular creative team to deliver the message they want to deliver. The reason you have an anthology is for the different perspectives. And then in addition to a thorough examination of a theme, I feel like diversity is huge. And I mean diversity of content, right? So a big charge for me on the feedback we were getting, right, is Dave might like one story the best and one story the least. And then our editor, the story that he liked the least, our editor liked the most. And then a story that was a complete miss for the production guy was the first one called out by my buddy in the media, right? And then one is resonating with like a young adult audience, right? One feels like a vintage foreign comic, almost spoken a different language, right? One feels more animated, one feels realistic, one feels more indie and pulls at these really raw emotions, right? One is a very modern, slick, current comic book like style, and that's not by accident, right? So when I'm building the menu, I'm isolating those components so that we hit that audience, and by that audience I mean like the audience, right? Like the broad.
oh yeah.
So you are in if you're a 17-year-old high school girl, or you're a 55-year-old lover of silver age horror, then you can pick up the book and find something that immediately resonates with you. And hopefully that grabs you enough to give the other components a chance, and then perhaps introduce you as the viewer, reader, to new material you might not otherwise gravitate toward, right? So like the variety that exists in the anthology is key from the perspective of the creative director, and then to thoroughly examine the theme is huge, or I think it falls short. And the sort of the fun challenge is when you get that prompt that Tyler's referencing, right? So like it's a different way to attack an anthology, and
Mhm.
if you have any conversation with Dave and Tyler, you know that they're they're not doing anything like how it's done. So they almost start with like, how do we do this in a different way? And so we all sort of needled on a prompt and tossed ideas around, and had it this like nebulous sort of idea of what it was going to be, and then ultimately Tyler and Dave like distilled it down into this like paragraph, and then it's my job to take that paragraph and present it to this diverse cast of creatives in a way that I can lead them to the landing, right? So I don't want a sci-fi western for this. I don't want a romantic comedy necessarily, unless it leads to these components that I know is the heart of the film, having read the script, having seen early parts of the movie, having talked extensively with Tyler and Dave. So you have to be able to mold the clay as it comes in, so when it lands it lives for the theme, and that's the fun for me as the guy who's sort of like trying to make it all fit into the box, and like that's the charge. It's like, yeah, like we got it, and giving them so much freedom to play jazz on can be scary if you don't have the right talent to work with. But everyone in the book, such pros, so connected to the mission and know what they're doing. When you work with people as talented as we have in the book, like it makes your life a little easier if you can get people of that caliber for sure.
Sure, sure. And how did you kind of connect with all of the different artists and writers? How did that process play out?
Um, so like okay, so there's a lot of things I do really poorly, Steve. Um, So, so uh, everyone has, so the way I look at it, right, is everyone could take a piece of paper and draw a line down the middle, right? And you can list like 10 things you do really poorly and 10 things you hope you do better than that. So one of the things I do better than poorly is that. So basically, if you need an anthology, if you need a diverse group of creatives, if you need a project delivered on time, on budget, if you need a gallery show filled, if you need like that's my business, like that's what I do, like way more than drawing a cool scary thing.
Mm,
Like it's that uh my people are artists. Like this has been my life in my world for 20 plus years. So like, oh, you need an independent like film director, I got one. You need a guy who's running a really rad horror podcast, I got one. Like, do you know what I'm saying though? Like,
Yeah.
and that's the thing, right? It's the currency that I deal in is art and like relationships and like going to battle with like-minded art people and extending opportunities and hoping they extend them back and networking and building and chasing and all that jazz, and like that's like my juice. Like so the easiest part of this was making those calls and building this team. Um, the hardest part was everything else. you
fair
know,
enough.
yeah, yeah. So the easy part and the fun part is calling these artists and telling them, "Hey, I got a really cool project for you. Check out this prompt. Wait till you see this movie. These guys get it. This is what we're doing. 64-page prestige format. We're gonna have a couple covers. It's gonna be legit, and then this is what we're doing." The hard part is, oh, we've got to build an infrastructure to launch an anthology, cover all of our bases legally, put into place the printing mechanism, the deliverable, how our whole structure is set up for the next time we do a book together, like all that stuff, the virtual brainstorm sessions and the board meetings and the arranging for New York Comic Con, like all that stuff, that's work.
That's the
um
shit that bores me too, Adam.
yeah,
I'll
yeah,
give
yeah.
that. Yeah,
Um,
yeah,
yeah, so, like so you have to have the capacity to do both or you're dead in the water.
Yeah.
So I try to look at that stuff always as like always is a learning opportunity, right? Like,
Sure.
oh, we've got to restructure these contracts. Okay, I'm not a lawyer, but I am now. Let's go. Like, we've got to figure out the best. Where is the juice worth the squeeze? Where's the most value for Red King for our presence at New York Comic Con? Okay, this is going to be 5 to 10 phone calls with a rep from New York Comic Con, and I'm going to have to pour over all of these assets and distill it down to where I think the best value is, and then make my recommendation to Red King. Like, that's stuff where it's like you have an aptitude for it, you put your head down, you get it done, and you learn.
Mhm.
But calling a bunch of people that whose artwork I love to tell them let's make a comic book, that's not hard.
Well, so much of art is connecting with people, right? Whether it's the people you're working with or it's the audience that you're trying to reach, right? And there's no wonder why that is the passion point, right? Like that's the easy part. It's about the people.
Yeah, and I mean, I don't know like how you guys are, but like I'm very, very lucky in friendship. You know, like my friends are my heroes. Like I don't take that lightly, and I don't like take that for granted. Like
Yeah.
it's real to me. You know what I mean? Like my favorite artists are my friends. The people that I look up to are my friends. My mentors are my friends. Like try to learn something from every one of them. And if they're my friends, it's for a reason. Like, there's a connection there. And I'm a rich man in friendship. And when you have that, it's great. Like, who wouldn't want to work with your heroes that happen to be your friends that you're also learning from, that you're also getting like, I want to be a sponge. I want to be the dumbest guy in the room every time. You know, and like you want to
I
like
like that.
if you surround yourself by those people that have this sort of like extra something that you don't have, or this extra like you can learn from these people,
Yeah.
and like it's just so cool. Like like when every time something rad happens for Tyler, I'm like giddy. It's like I'm like silly. I'm like, oh my god, like and like that's what it's about, man. Like and everybody that contributed to the book, whether it was a cover or a pinup or a story or whatever, like I'm stoked for them. Like, yeah, we get to make a comic. Like, and I don't know, it's just how my mind is. So I feel like if you're working with people that you really believe in, it just makes it easy, right? Because if you don't believe in them, why are you working with them? And if you do believe in them, let them do their thing. Like, some people need a kick in the butt, some people need a pat in the back. Of course, sometimes you gotta wrestle with the nuances of the story and blah blah blah. But like generally speaking, if you're working with someone you believe in them for a reason and let them do what they do. You know what I mean? Like that's the juice. And that's what they did with us. They said, hey, here's a prompt. We believe in you guys. Do it. And then they were like, Adam, let us know. Like, go. And and like it
Make
was
sure
rad.
it's good.
Well, the magic that really happened, which is really cool, and the way you guys sort of described it, right? You didn't want to sort of just be the movie, and I think you guys really nailed it. The fact that like this isn't just a reproduction of the Shade film, but it feels so at home with the story and the essence of what that's all about. It's just really cool what you guys were able to accomplish with it.
Thank you.
Yeah,
I
man,
gotta
thanks.
tell you,
Appreciate that.
it. I was excited about this from the outset. I got to tell you, I was always excited about it, even when from the first meeting we had with Adam, and to say, hey, we're going to do this. Let's do this. Let's figure this out. I always knew it was going to be fulfilling for me, but I don't know if I really knew how much. Um, I'll never forget the first time I saw like the proofs and I read through some of the stories and things that had been selected, and I was incredibly moved and still am when I read some of these. And even as someone who had a hand or whatever small role I played in organizing this thing or sort of creating the prompt that we gave to these incredible fucking like writers and artists. Um, it was at once it's all so there's this incredible breadth of work and this array of ideas and stuff, but it also all feels so familiar to me. It felt very familiar to me and moved me in a way that I don't think I was really ready for. So it's a pleasure for me even to read the anthology. Like I hope that it is for people who have no prior knowledge of it, because I just think it's incredible. And it does it the way that these artists that Adam was able to sort of get on board to do this in the way that they very, very clearly understood what we were going for, what we were aiming at, is almost like it couldn't have gone better. And I knock on wood, maybe it's crazy. Like you expect things, to sort of have their ups and downs, and maybe you have to adjust here and move this here and put this one. But it was just, I was blown away. I was blown away by how close I felt to all of these stories. Adam, I don't know if I've said this to you explicitly, but let me say it here in this recording. You did an incredible job curating those teams and those stories. I am extremely proud of this. Every story moves me. Yeah, absolutely. I'm wild about it. I think it's incredible.
It's really cool. Like, so Tyler's a filmmaker that loves comics, and I'm a comic maker that loves film. And at the end of the day, right, we're really just both storytellers, and that's where I think we nerd out is storytelling, right? And that's how the story is it's it starts and stops with that, And so the idea of doing an anthology based on a prompt that isn't a one-to-one, isn't a direct adaptation, is wildly outside the box. Wildly outside the box. And they did it sort of natural because their default is wildly outside the box. And when you play in that parameter, right, there is potential for car crashes and disaster. So you've got to have a way to corral that. But man, a typical conversation I would have with creatives would be like, okay, so wait a minute, so what do we got to do? And you're like, yeah, just interpret the prompt. Well, yeah, but like, what do we got to do? and that's where it starts. That's where, okay, so there were certain stories that I had a lot of involvement with, and some almost not at all, and that's just because organically you work with these people, and sometimes the people just find their pocket and they get right in and they want it, and then sometimes they need a little to pull this way, pull that way. And I found the best way to get people to connect with the prompt was to always steer it personal, right? So if I was talking with the team and they had a story, and they were sort of like close, right? Like I inherently knew we were going to get there, but we weren't quite there yet. It was, okay, where is this set? Well, why don't we set it in your hometown? Okay, not literally your hometown. Really think about your hometown when you write this. Or, oh, you don't like this city, you don't like this place. Like, think about this city you don't like. Those sorts of things. For example, the story that I kind of feel I don't want to give all the stories a hug. I'm admittedly biased, but the last story in the book is by an artist named Haig DeMargin, and he's a prolific, uber talented guy. He can do literally everything.
Oh, Grain by Grain is phenomenal.
Yeah, and we were chatting about how to find the nerd, how to really get there, and I pushed him to make it personal. He was hesitant at first, He was like, who cares about this, that? Like, make it personal, man. Like, pull from your past, pull from your family, pull from your history, pull from the stories, And it was like, man, once he started doing that, everything he showed me, I was just like, this guy is out of control. And so the whole point of that prompt and what Tyler and Dave wanted the artist to do was to, what is the shade to you? Like, what is your version of these central themes, right? And funneling all of the team, all the different pieces to that central artery, that nerve of like their actual personal interpretation. That was the lever that really, I think, got these people. And it all came from, that them not being so, like, even some, so is there a monster? Well, does there have to be like in a certain, I'm like, all right, guys, got it. I know, because I have the same questions.
Yeah. And I gotta tell you, I'm glad you talked a little bit about the prompt, Adam, because I think anyone watching this is gonna be like, what is this fucking prompt they keep talking about?
Oh, well, maybe we should talk about that.
We should probably tell people what the prompt is.
Right. So I don't want to be, I don't want to be too on the nose with this, too on the button. But anyway, obviously, we made a movie called The Shade, right? Which is obviously about, um, three brothers dealing with the loss of their father. It's a story about some young guys dealing with, with grief, with various sort of mental illness, panic disorder, major depressive disorder, these sorts of things. And if all of those sorts of things fell under this sort of umbrella term we called the shade, right? With these afflictions, we wanted to kind of say, what does that mean to you? What have you sort of experienced as a person, or anyone you knew? It doesn't have to be personal experience, like Adam said. It could be, tangential or even imagined. It's art. So that's sort of what we set out to do, and that's why when Adam said, "What is the shade to you?" That was sort of what we were going for. We wanted to sort of hit on those themes, some of this heavier stuff that we were dealing with in the film. We wanted to bring into this other medium and have people explore those same themes, but without any uber specificity, right? We wanted to just say, hey, this is what we're talking about in the movie. Maybe you have, or you could imagine, or have experience with some other version of this, or what have you. And that's really what we were aiming at. I hope that's not too strange of an answer. Or
No, and Steve, just to be super clear, the prompt is on the inside. You probably gathered this already, but the prompt is on the inside front cover.
Yeah, a malevolent physical manifestation. This is the prompt.
Yeah, that's the verbatim prompt that we gave the teams.
So everyone knows what we're talking about.
Yeah.
Want me to read it out?
Please.
Okay. All right, fine.
A malevolent physical manifestation of depression, anxiety, and grief pervading the lives of its victims. The relentless suffering cannot be escaped and must be confronted. The Shade.
Yeah, and then we would put in the what is the shade to you kind of thing. So yeah, but
Yeah,
it was it was cool. It was a very cool way to crack the code on a comic book, really.
oh, and it really, I love, which one really, I reread it last night, and like the one that really hit me. So not surprisingly, when I really think about it, it's like as a new parent, I think it was The Walk.
Yeah,
Mm.
Ken's story.
Ken Hudson's story.
Ooh.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh
Yeah.
boy, gut punch.
That
Gut-
last frame with I know, man. I
It
cried
took
when I
me.
read that one, and I was moved by all the stories. I'm not taking anything away from anyone else.
Yeah,
But
yeah,
yes,
yeah.
Steve. Yeah, amazing.
No,
Go
no,
on.
because I was just gonna say, because you know what it is, going back to what I think Adam was saying, or so I can't remember, but you were saying a little bit earlier, was like the styles are so different. Like if you gravitate towards one thing, maybe it opens you up to different styles. The style with which The Walk is illustrated isn't necessarily a style I might generally pick up if I'm in the store. But I'm like, as I'm going through it, you kind of go on this ride, and it grabs you, and all these stories do this because they're all so unique. So whether it's like your kind of flavor of jam or not, there really is something in there that some nugget or something that you can really just absorb. And that last frame, because then I think especially as parents, like we're always wondering, like like at least now this is like a new fear unlocked. It's like how is my own struggle, or how are my own actions imprinting on my child, right? And so like that was like, oh man, like, but all of them so like truly like.
Yeah, it was cool because Ken's a dear friend and a heck of a guy, a heck of an artist, and his style is pretty progressive, right? It's pretty forward, and you have to want to engage in his work. I think most people do because he's so damn good, right? But
Yeah,
it's not it's not it's not a passive style. It's not the kind of he speaks a visual language that's dense.
yeah,
You are not going to casually look at one of his books, zoom by it, and get it right away if you're not really, invested in what's going on. And as soon as you sort of get the notes of the song he's singing, you start to get the accent that he's speaking to you in. You're like, wow, he can so clearly and deftly convey to you information with the most minimal of parts. and the way he composes images. And so there's a barrier of entry with this work to people that are uninitiated, but when you invest, it's very rewarding. And I was rewarded by his inclusion, and then also the response that his story got, specifically from Tyler and Dave. They both really responded to that, and he was like, I knew I wanted them in there, and I was also hoping that they got what I was why he was in there, and Ken made me look really good because again, when you work with really talented people, they make you look really good. But it was a powerful story for sure, for sure.
Yeah, yeah, and they all were like, I mean, just sort of like brief synopsis, right? I mean, you have stories here about like the town, certainly with like grief. You have stories like, which one is it? The door with like substance. You have grain by grain, which is sort of this like immigration refugee story. I mean, like really does run the gamut. Rats Inside. I mean, guilt, right? Like
Yeah.
so much. It really is really
It's incredible, and that's what I was saying earlier. Is like all this, like this unbelievable sort of like array of stories that run the gamut, to use a phrase that Adam used earlier, just in such a way that it's like, wow, the richness of like the palette of the book is like, it was almost unbelievable to me when I read it for the first time, because you mentioned some of these stories like the town. I was like, Jesus, I grew up in a place that this could have been about my hometown, or Veronica and Andy Fish's story. I'm like, this is, not to get too personal here, but like I can commiserate with that, dude. Like that's the thing. I've fucking dealt with that shit. It was just incredible to know that we could put this thing out into the world and let Adam go and sort of find all these incredibly talented artists and creators and come back with stuff that felt so personal to me. It was incredible, man. It was
Cool.
it was really amazing.
To your point, Tyler, and what you said, Steve, like, so Tyler, you said, that town resonated with, like, like there was you kind of have a certain personal attachment, and then Steve, you're a new parent, right? So, and like when you brought up a town, like when I was working with that team, there's a bit of dialogue in there, and I said to the writer, I said, it caught me, right? And I said, yeah, man, I've had that conversation, and I was like, well, and I was like, yeah, like you keep that, because it's like, it's these things like we're three different people looking at these books, and you're finding these nuggets that grab and resonate, and and even if it's like, so Rats Inside, right? Like you're talking about the guilt, but then also we're making a comic, right? Like we're having fun, like, so like there's also the body horror stuff, right? Like
Sure.
rat,
Yeah.
and like we have the Jay Lee cover, like don't get much horror movie spooky than that, right? Like, and then the gallery section, right? So I always really advocate hard and push hard. Not that in this case I didn't have to push because these guys were on the same page, but I always want there to be a gallery section in the back of books I work on. It's a very easy way to attract a sort of a diverse crowd of artists, right? And it's an easy ask. So you can get like, say, a more established professional, right? Because you ask them to do one image and kind of riff off of a theme, and it's an easier ask. It's a easier barrier of entry. So you can get more people involved to like be part of this cool representation, right? So the gallery section is doing the same thing. The gallery section has the same prompt. They're just doing what, like, as an illustrator, I do and my brain does, is as an illustrator, you're telling a story with pictures, right? So the single image communication, right? That's what my background is in. And so when you bring in artists for a gallery section, they're getting the same prompt. They're telling the same story. They're just telling it with one image.
It demands even more concision, and it's
and with no dialogue. So you're in the gallery sections, same thing. It's and we're but it's like it's a horror. And like we want someone to look. This is a really cool horror comic, but also it's more than a horror comic, right? It's a horror movie, or is it? I don't know. It's like it's that sort of area that we're dancing.
Exactly right. That is. Yeah. I love it.
So as a Shade fanboy myself now,
We love you.
will there be more? I have to ask, will there be more?
More of what is the
Yeah,
question? I mean,
yeah.
I'll tell you what. There's always room for more. What I will say is that there will probably not be more in the typical way. There will be no Shade 2. There will be no sequel in terms of, cinema
Mm,
land. But I will say that, it's an idea that we really love. The thematic content is something we all feel very close to at Red King. And I will say we're developing a second film right now that I'm really excited about that explores a lot of the same thematic ground, but that is much different from a character perspective.
mhm.
So, and I have even yet a third idea. So I think that our first three cinematic offerings may be a trilogy of sorts that deal in this stuff. It might not be like the Beckman Boys or anything called The Shade, um, but I think there's more to come in this sort of thematic playground, if not this very specific world and or universe or multiverse.
I love it. It's
But,
sort
but
of,
also, you never know.
I mean, it sort of reminds me of John Carpenter's original intention for Halloween, right? This is where Season of the Witch came from, right? It was
Yeah,
supposed to be an anthology, right? Just
sure.
with the holiday as a theme, right?
Yeah.
So, I mean, bringing
Season of
back
the
the
Witch
horror
doesn't get its
anthology.
due, buddy. I'm a big Season of the Witch guy myself.
Yeah,
I gotta
and
tell
then
you.
then from I'd say from the publishing angle, it's we've talked a couple different times about potentially doing adaptations, direct adaptations, potentially doing other versions, right? And then if and when, however, this all these we can keep lining miracles up, right? Of course, like we would love to do, anthology for the next film and the film after that, and then even aspirational pie in the sky, you know, produce books that are thematically consistent and tonally consistent with what White King is all about. And
Absolutely.
Yeah.
if the sky's the limit, right? I'm making comic books till I die, and Tyler's making comic books till like he dies, and I mean movies till he dies, and we're getting pizza and we're high fiving and riding off into the sunset, right? So like aspirationally, right, we're making comics and movies forever.
Yeah,
It's just it's
that's
not
right.
always an aspirational world, so we just got to keep on
That's right.
plugging.
That's right. And honestly, man, I know we have talked about sort of a one-to-one like graphic novel adaptation of the movie, or at least the events, the timeline that comprises the movie. I would want it to
Sure.
be either sort of much richer and more detailed, sort of like an
Mhm.
expanded look,
Yeah.
or I've always thought, maybe like I don't even know why I'm saying this on a recording, but like
Shoot.
the idea of like Jason, like what was
Yeah.
his, and that you'll if you see the movie you'll understand. But like, what if you did a graphic novel sort of thing about like Jason's experiences
Yeah.
up to the inciting event of the movie where he arrives
Prequel.
home, like his last year at school, or like starting from when he
Yeah.
like that stuff is
It's
what
like
fascinates me. It's
that what if,
tangential to the story. You know
Yeah,
what I
the
mean?
what if
I love
concept,
that
right?
stuff.
Like,
I love that
yeah,
stuff.
a way to expand
Yeah,
on the what's
yeah.
contained in the film, right?
Yeah.
There's ways to expand it. It's cool. I like that.
I need
Yeah,
to pitch that to somebody who might be able to make that happen. I'm gonna write that down.
yeah. This
Yeah,
is
Hey,
yeah, yeah,
great.
man,
yeah.
We have a creative
I know. Let's see.
brainstorming
I
session.
know. Let's see if we can figure that
who runs this motherfucker? But, yeah,
out.
Thank you guys again so much for joining and just talking about the Shade and just sharing your love with your project and sharing this with the world. My hope is that more people pick this up, pick up the film, which the film is not streaming yet or anything, right? We're still waiting on that.
it's not out yet. Yeah, we got there's some obviously some exciting things happening with regards to the movie this year, early this year. So that's all.
Mhm.
That's all imminent. So hang in there, Steve. It's
Keep
gonna
it
be. It's gonna be available to you and the rest of the world. Hopefully, much sooner than later. So yeah,
awesome,
absolutely.
awesome. But the graphic novel is readily available, correct?
It's
Yes, sir.
absolutely readily available. We have physical copies you can order online. We not only have this beautiful Jay Lee cover, but we have an incredibly beautiful alternate cover that was done by a very, very talented artist named Adam Miller. I don't know if you've ever heard of this guy. Adam, hold it up, man. You got one there? Come on, buddy.
All right.
Yeah.
So
I'll also
Okay, baby.
fancy
I
editing.
said it. But
all right, so we got this one, right? This is the J Lee cover that you guys are that is repping on the side, and then this is
Yep.
So we did this is called a ratio for the comic nerds out there.
That's
This is
right.
called a ratio variant. So basically,
I didn't know that.
yeah, we are reverse, huh? So
I told you.
so we are this is called a ratio variant. So basically, how that works is if you say it's like a 3-to-1 or a 4-to-1, right? So for every 4 copies of the main cover, you print 1 copy of the variant cover. So it's scarcer, harder to find. We do a different trade dress, a different logo. You'll see that there's no Shade logo, but there's a Red King logo. And yeah, I did this cover. Yours truly. So this is also available on the site.
Yeah.
Until they're not, because there's less of them. So
Yeah. And also available digitally if you don't like beautiful, glossy, gorgeous, like paperback bound things.
Yeah.
I don't know why you wouldn't, but we do have it digitally. So
yeah, we're big tangible media guys, so yeah. And then we're ultimately we'd like to get it out. I think try to get it out to some more conventions and some more Comic Cons, depending on how the year goes. And then locally, this is all but done essentially. But I'm pretty I have some pretty good relationships with local shop owners in the Boston area. And I've already got like 4 or 5 shops that have expressed interest in having us in for like signings to sort of do like a local tour. And we're just trying to find the right spot timing wise for that. So hopefully we get to a couple conventions. Hopefully we get to a couple shops. You can come out and say hi, meet some of the creators, meet some of the contributors, get a book signed. We'll scribble on it for you. And then if you don't find us in person, then yeah, you can get it digitally or you can get it at Red King website, and both covers are available.
So every link and social handle, all that stuff will be available down below. I will try to get some fancy pop-up stuff on the video if I can. If not, it'll all be there.
I'll send you a really nice picture of Tyler and I at New York Comic Con that our moms loved.
That's right. They did.
Oh, for the thumbnail, is that what you mean? Sure.
Awesome.
Thank you again so much.
Steve,
I really appreciate it.
We love you. Thank you so much for having us.
Thanks for having me on this time as well. And anytime you want to talk comics, movies, or sappy art connective things, call us.
I might need some advice from you. I've been wanting to. I can't illustrate, but I want to write, and I want to figure out how to grassroots it. So I might.
Now I know a guy who has a podcast. You know a guy who makes comics.
There's a guy up there, right there.
Yeah, that's how this works.
So I may take you up on that. So you may be eating your words. I don't know.
Always, man. Always.
Well, thank you again, everybody, for watching. And make sure to check out The Shade, available online, and keep an eye out for the film because you don't want to miss it. See you guys real soon.
Thank you.
Thanks, man. Thank you.
Hey fam, Newman here from Movies for Days, your non-pretentious easy access movie chat podcast and weekly deep dive into any film from any genre, from any decade with anybody's guess as to how we chose that movie that week. Proud member of the You Run Podcast Network. Check us out where all great podcasts can be heard. And on Twitter at Movies Days. Movies is spelled regular, Days is spelled with a Z.